Ladies and gentlemen, Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Firouzja, Esports World Cup Grand Final. The Esports World Cup has been brilliant and breathtaking, but it comes down to these two gentlemen. Many players have tried to qualify. We had 90 take place in the last chance qualifiers. 16 players made the final field. It has come down to these two. Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Firouzja. This is game one. They were playing essentially a tennis match, but for chess. It was going to be 3 sets. The first to win 2 sets. A set containing 4 games. So a very tennis-style setup. And if a set was drawn, I believe they were going to play Armageddon. So this is game one of set 1. Magnus Carlsen has got the white pieces. And oh my gosh, I think the move of the day, the move of the damn tournament was played in this game. So Magnus Carlsen plays d4. We get knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, and d5. So a Queen's Gambit declined, a very traditional line. g3. Magnus Carlsen, when Magnus Carlsen needs to play, he's going to go for a Catalan. Bishop to d6, an interesting move. I haven't seen this played a lot in Catalans. Bishop to g2, short castles, knight to c6. So a very interesting setup. A very non-traditional setup probably here from Alireza Firouzja, but he knows what he's doing. We get knight to c3, and now we take on c4, and we get queen to a4, e5. And now Magnus Carlsen plays d5. You don't want to open up the center. Alireza's pieces are much more equipped, and they're just going to get active. So the knight jumps in, looking for a fork of sorts. Can't quite go there at the moment, but if you play, bishop to f4, and just looking to get active, and Magnus Carlsen grabs the pawn in the center, and you might say, wait, how's that possible? Well, if the bishop takes the knight, this knight hangs. So we get knight b takes d5. So now we got a whole bunch of hanging knights. We grab here, we grab here, we grab here, and we play here. Do you follow all that? All right, material is level, but Magnus does have a bit of a split structure, and it's a 3-on-2 on the queen side for Alireza Firouzja, and Magnus Carlsen has got a slightly less meaningful 4-on-3 on the king side. And the bishop is active, kind of pointed at the king this way. The queen stays down the whole d file, although we can get rook to d1, and at any moment this rook is going to be in the game, so Magnus Carlsen's got problems to solve. He plays bishop to e3, not inviting a damage of the structure, because you would just take with the knight. We get queen to e7, which now hits the bishop. Rook ab1, just developing the rook, making it a bit more difficult for this bishop on c8 to develop. We get c6, bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, and now queen to b4, inviting a trade which would improve Magnus's structure. And now he's got this Catalan bishop, this beautiful Catalan bishop, targeting the whole queen side, and he can play like a4 and just break it down and have a really meaningful position. So that for that reason, Alireza plays queen to h5. We now get bishop to f3, and we get bishop to g4. Queen takes b7 though. So we ignore the bishop and the damage to the structure. We're going to grab a pawn. Bishop takes, e takes f3. Queen takes f3. Knight to e5 hits the queen. Queen takes c3. And now knight takes c6. Alireza here has a few moves, right? You can see he's a little bit down on time. He's down about 30 seconds. So there are several moves you can play here, right? You can play like h6, king h8, a couple of waiting moves. If you want to do something, you can play like queen c2 to target the pawn. Just get the queen nice and active on the second rank. But here, Alireza plays queen to a3. And you can see on the board, Magnus Carlsen is completely winning. If he plays the absolutely brilliant move that is knight to b8. Game over. You're like, what's the idea? The idea is very simple. That rook cannot take. And if you sacrifice the rook, rook a takes b8, queen takes b8, buddy. I've got bad news for you. You can't take my queen. If you do take my queen, you get mated. You just about mated because it takes. You've got queen f8. And then you've got like rook fb1. Knight d7. And now like rook takes f8. And Magnus Carlsen would get to this endgame and would be just completely winning. Knight to b8. And the thing is, you have to take the rook. You have to take the knight. And you have to get to this endgame. But we get queen to a2. We don't take the queen. We come back. So now Magnus Carlsen is just up in exchange. He infiltrates and trades off the rooks. And he gives check and trades off the queens. And he gets to the completely winning endgame. And makes short work of this endgame. And polishes off Alireza Firouzja. And by short work, I mean he's Magnus Carlsen, he's up on time, he's up in an endgame, he makes sure he demonstrates proper technique, doesn't blunder a fork, and f4 was the final move of the game, but not of the match. Not of the match. Oh my goodness, not of the match. So, we just close that, because we want to avoid spoilers. So that was the first game of the set, right? So the next 2 games were drawn. That means that this game is must win for Alireza Firouzja. He's got the white pieces, and we get an Italian game. Alireza must win this to force, I believe it's an Armageddon. Or they'll just tie the sets. I wasn't completely sure. Sorry, I missed the live broadcast, unfortunately. It's just an awkward time here in South Africa. And this was a very typical Italian, lots of maneuvering. Both the knights went to the king side. Very typical, Alireza expanding on the queen side. He's actually a very underrated Italian player. People talk about Hans and like Fabi. Alireza is actually very good at the Italian. He plays a lot, but he goes for d4. He kind of pushes the envelope. He takes d4, we trade off rooks, which wasn't the right decision, and takes, and now he's kind of a bit worse if Magnus finds knight to e6. Magnus doesn't find it though, he just plays rook d8, because remember, Magnus can take a draw. Rook e4 is, you can see he must take the rook. He decides not to, but probably because he wants to keep pieces on the board. Queen of c4 is just a devastating blunder because of bishop takes f2. Brilliant move. Not quite, it's a great move. Reason being, king to f2, you get knight to d3 check. And you might say, well, what's the big idea? What if I just play like, king g8? Oops. Your position falls apart completely because of that. Knight to d3 was played. We got king e3, the knight still fell, and Alireza went for all he could, but queen f2 is just mate. Straight up, it's just checkmate on the board. So Magnus Carlsen took the first set, and in very convincing fashion in the end, but it wasn't all one-sided. It was not all one-sided. As we disappear the board so I can load the next game. The first game of the second set. Things started to turn around. Alireza Firouzja with the white pieces goes to d4, d5, and he plays like a Catalan adjacent, but it's not quite a Catalan. And by that means we've got the fianchettoed bishop, but I think Magnus was looking for like knight takes and getting like a reverse Grunfeld with like e5 and knight to c6. I think he was looking for a bit of a reverse Grunfeld. Where white's like playing black in that position. We don't quite get it. And you can see Magnus finds the right moves, and it's a very dynamic position. We get e3, rook to c8, knight goes out to the edge of the board. We trade off the dark squared bishops, and this just looks like a fairly stable position. How is anybody going to mess this up? But it's 10 plus 0, and you've got to make moves. Knight f6 is probably not the right move for Magnus. You don't need a retreat just yet. Now knight to g5, bishop to f5, queen d2, rook c7. The knight plants itself on c5. We get rook to c3, knight to b4. We kick out the knight. We play b4, b6, knight a7, queen d7. Good move from Magnus. He's got a bit of initiative. We trade off the rooks. Play b5, knight to b8. Magnus is just better. Queen to b4. Knight b7. Magnus is tangibly better now. f3. Firouzja just making mistakes. But rook e1 and knight f8. The hardest thing in chess is to win a game, surprisingly enough, when you're better. It's easier to fight from behind because you've got nothing, so you're going to complicate the position. It's hard to win a game when you know you're winning because you're constantly looking for like knockout blows, and you can not play it correctly, and Magnus doesn't. He's winning. He's going for Firouzja's king. Knight takes e4 is a miss because of rook e2. Unbelievable. In this position, if you simply play bishop takes h3, right? And bishop takes h3, now you can take. Now you get like rook c4. And the position just falls. Magnus doesn't quite get it right. He takes in the center, allows rook e2, knight takes f2, sacks the queen, but he's not getting enough for it. He doesn't get nowhere near enough for it. He gets a piece and a rook, but it's nowhere near enough because Alireza just storms through with a passed pawn. His king is perfectly safe. He can sack the bishop and promote a second queen. Rook to g3, sack the queen, or you sack the rook, and it was Magnus Carlsen who was getting mated. You can see mate in 3 on the board, because he's got no moves. So Alireza Firouzja took the lead. But if you're a fan of Alireza Firouzja, I'm afraid to tell you, it went downhill from here. He proceeded to lose the next 2 games to Magnus Carlsen. And the final game of the set, he was once again in a must-win scenario. This is the final game of set 2. Magnus Carlsen has got the white pieces. e4, c5. A Sicilian defense from Alireza, and Magnus just plays an Alpen. Because he just needs a draw, and he will be the Esports World Champion for chess. And the Alpen Sicilian is so solid, it's so deathly boring. Because you kind of play for symmetry. And we get that. Look, it's dynamic. Magnus pushed, Alireza's pushed pawns on the queen side. His knights have danced very nicely into the center. But Magnus has just got so much space. His pieces are really well placed. Alireza's looking like laser in, create tactics all over the center, activate his pieces. He might even play like king f1, so his rook always has access. He's pushed his pawns, and he's slightly better. I don't know if anyone's noticed this. It's really difficult to beat Magnus Carlsen. Bishop to g3, d6. Bishop to e4, now short castles, short castles. These players just castling on moves 16 and 17 because who needs the 5 golden rules of chess? 3 golden rules, not 5. Rook to b8, rook e1, and now d takes e5. Alireza looking to clarify in the center, but it's probably a rush decision because we can trade off the knights and just play knight takes e5. Magnus hasn't won a pawn, but you kind of maybe needed a bit more tactics in the center because now we can just get like rook to c8, defending the bishop. Rook to c1 for Magnus isn't the best move. Knight to d4. Alireza plants his knight in the center very nicely, but Magnus gets knight to d5. We get this trade and slight tactical sequence. And here Alireza plays e6. Down on time by nearly 3 minutes, he plays e6 and is just going to run into a whole lot of problems. Most of them start with rook ed1. Because, where's the queen going? It really struggles for squares, and you are just better, and there are tactics all over the place. Everywhere. So we get queen f6. Knight to d7 is a fork. Queen b2, we grab the rook. And c5. Trade. The bishop blockades as best it can, but now rook b1. Queen c2 to monitor both rooks. Bishop to e5, f6, but now bishop to d6. Now secure a nice place for my bishop. I'm going to ask for a queen trade. I get my queen trade, and this is just completely winning for Magnus Carlsen. And c6 was the final move. Magnus Carlsen wins. He takes set 2 3-1 after winning the first set, also 3-1. Alireza not getting a game in that. And I will take you now to this Magnus Carlsen.
Absolutely incredible achievement for Magnus Carlsen.
Oh, sorry, I realized that I messed it up.
Absolutely incredible achievement for Magnus Carlsen. Absolutely incredible achievement for Magnus.